one best overall leg exercise for basketball. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
My name is Fire, Fury, Power. My name is Legend.
Today's video is about if I could only do one leg exercise for basketball. If I could only do one, if I only had time for one, whatever the case may be, this is the one leg exercise I would do. Most basketball players would probably say the traditional squat is what they would do. I would say that not only am I going to do a version of the traditional squat, which involves doing a traditional squat, but we're going to take that movement even further and go into full range of motion and get full flexion of that movement. So instead of stopping with your legs, your thighs, your hamstrings parallel to the ground, what you would do with a traditional squat, you're gonna go all the way down into that squat while bringing your heels up and off the ground. Thus, your hamstrings are then going to be resting on your calf muscles. This puts your legs and your knees in full flexion. A leg movement, a leg position that you don't get in any other exercise, any other movement. Doing so helps to isolate the inside muscle of your quadriceps, known as your vastus medialis oblique muscle. That muscle, the primary function of it is to extend your knee. And think about it. What kind of explosive athletic movements can you do that don't involve extending your knee? Pretty much nothing. So when you're in the bottom of this squat that I call a VMO squat, when you're at the bottom of it, you're in full flexion, total full leg flexion, and your knee is in total flexion as well. The more you put your knee in complete flexion like that, you're forcing blood to around through that knee joint, making it stronger over time because you're getting good, healthy, nutrient-dense blood to that knee joint, thus over time making it stronger and stronger, and thus helping to avoid injury in the future. Now let me be clear. While this movement, this exercise can help you to be more explosive when running and jumping, it's not intended for that. The intended use of this exercise is for stability so that you have the potential to be more explosive when running and jumping. The reason for that is because without stability, you can't have balance in your base. Without balance, you cannot do anything explosively. You can't run or jump and generate that explosiveness if you don't have balance. The better balance you have, the more of it you have, the faster you can acquire that balance, the more potential you have to be more explosive. But you can't have that balance without first having the stability to get there. That's why this is my one overall leg exercise that I would do if I could only do one for basketball. Before we get into the actual exercise, we have to start with safety, because safety goes above everything else. It comes before everything else because we're trying to avoid injury at all costs. So number one, I am not your doctor. I am not your trainer. Thus, you should not do anything I say. You should not listen to me at all. For legal reasons, any lawyers or judges watching, hey, I told them, don't listen to me, don't do anything I say. I don't know anything about this stuff. You should never listen to anything I say. You should never follow any instructions that I give you. Second of all, if you are going to do this movement, always do a proper warm-up first. Never skip the warm-up. If you don't have time to do the warm-up properly, you don't have time to train. I don't care how young you are, how in shape you are, how fresh your body is, you always need to warm up properly. That warm up is going to be something different for everybody, whatever you prefer, whatever you enjoy, as long as you always do it, as long as you repeatedly do it. For me, I walk backwards either on a treadmill or an elliptical. I walk backwards because it forces blood to your quadriceps and thus to your knee joints, getting them as warmed up as they possibly can before I do any kind of leg movement. But for you, do whatever kind of steady state, medium pace cardio for at least 10 minutes before doing this leg or any other kind of leg movement. Any kind of cardio that involves bending your knee is the kind of warm-up you should be doing. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're bending and involving your knees. Third point on safety is You should not feel any pain while doing this movement. There's a difference between muscle burn, which we want, and pain in your joints and tendons, which we don't. So if you feel pain in those joints, in your ankles or your knees or your hips or your lower back while doing this, don't do this movement. Stop immediately. Fourth point is, maybe within the motion of doing this movement, you can get to a certain depth in this squat before you start to feel that joint pain. If you can do that, if you can get fairly good range of motion out of this movement before you start getting that joint pain, my recommendation would be, okay, go ahead, go through the movement just before, stop just before you get to that point where that pain starts. So never go to the point where the pain exists, stop right before it, come back up. The theory being that over time, while you improve the strength in your legs and in your knees, the more you do the movement, the stronger you get. Over time, you will be able to increase that range of motion without having any pain. So essentially, over time, you will eliminate the pain by going partially down before you hit that pain, doing that over and over again, over time, building up your strength, thus building up your range of motion until you can go all the way down. Now, with safety out of the way, let's get to the fun part, the actual movement. For the movement itself, it's very simple. It's just straight up and down. Your back is going to stay straight the entire time. Very important not to lean to any side. You want maximum balance and stability throughout the whole movement. Also, always have something to hang on to put your hands on to stabilize yourself. Never do this movement open without holding on to anything. Always have something to hold on to, be it a wall or a chair, whatever you have that you can hold on to stabilize and balance yourself. You're not going to use this to pull yourself up or down. You're only using this for stability and balance throughout the whole movement, not to pull yourself up or down. Leg position is important, so you're going to want to have your legs about shoulder width apart, but that's going to depend on person to person what's most comfortable for you in terms of how far apart your legs are. And then you're going to want to probably turn your feet, point your toes outwards just a little bit, but again, that's going to depend person to person on your biomechanics. What I then like to do is, once I have my grip for my stability, right, now I like to go down into the movement, right, and I just sit here for a minute just to make sure I have my leg and my foot position the way I want it, the way it's comfortable. And by comfortable, I mean, do I have maximum optimal balance and stability in this position? Once I've determined that, okay, this is a good stable position for me, I come back up and now I'm ready to start the movement. And you'll notice that as I go down, right, my heels come off of the ground to meet my legs. So as I go down, right, my heels come off the ground and now my entire leg is in full flexion. I cannot flex my leg any more than this. My entire hamstring is on my entire calf muscle. My quadriceps are being stretched as far as they possibly humanly can. My knee is in full flexion, forcing as much blood and nutrients to my joints as possible, right? If I were doing a traditional squat, I would go down, I would stop right about here, and while this is good and it works your quadriceps as a whole, you don't get that extra extension. In terms of your speed of movement, what you want is, you want to go fast enough so that there's actual movement taking place, but the point of that movement is to get as much contraction, the hardest, steadiest contraction in your VMO part of your quadricep as possible. You want to feel this muscle burn as much as you possibly can. You want that burn. The more it burns, the more benefit, the more progress you're making. So in terms of how fast you do the movement, it's gonna vary depending on person to person, but you're gonna go slower on the way down, a little bit faster on the way up, the entire time focusing on the contraction of your VMO. So for me, it looks something like this. So I get my position, everything feels good, I feel balanced, everything feels optimal in terms of my stability. Now I'll start my set. So this is all it is, right? It's just down kind of slow, up a little bit faster. You'll notice I'm not being explosive, I'm not trying to be explosive. All I'm trying to do is focus on the muscle right here, getting as much contraction as possible, trying to get as much burn as possible. My hand is not pulling me in any kind of direction, it's just making sure I'm staying on balance throughout the whole movement so that I don't end up injuring myself. I'm hearing a little bit of popping and cracking in my knees. That's just the way my genetics and my biomechanics happen to be. It's not a problem, I don't feel any pain, so I continue on. Also, you will notice that I am not stopping here at the top. I'm not getting to the top and locking my knees out so that I'm in a standing position. You can do that, but I like to only come up about 80 or 85% of the way, because when you come up all the way and you lock your knees out, now you're just standing here. There's no more pressure and weight on your leg muscles. My heels don't go all the way down. They don't touch the ground. They stay a little bit off the ground the entire time. That forces my quadricep, my VMO, to keep firing throughout the entire movement. I never take complete pressure off of it. Something else to keep in mind is your very first set will be your longest set, because before that set you don't have any lactic acid yet built up in your VMO. As you go through your sets, you're going to build up that lactic acid, which is going to make your VMO then burn, and even when you rest between your sets, you're not going to rest long enough in order for that lactic acid to dissipate all the way, and so as your sets go on, they're going to get shorter and shorter, but your first one is going to be your longest one. And notice at the bottom of that squat, it may look like I'm bouncing, but I am not. I'm going down to the very bottom so I get that full range of motion, that full flexion, right? And then I'm trying to explode a little bit out of the very bottom of that, yet staying stable and controlled throughout the movement. But I am not resting down there, and I am not bouncing down there either. So it's a very simple yet effective movement. If I was only going to do one movement for my legs for basketball, this would definitely be it. Now let's talk reps and sets. Let's break this up into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So beginners, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go through your proper warm-up, and then once you get into your first set, your longest set, you're gonna do that until you start to feel the burn. Let me just go back and say that what I mean by beginners is you don't yet have the experience of exercising your legs and knowing what it feels like when they get fatigued. You're not yet familiar with that feeling of exercise fatigue in your legs. The less experienced you are, the less familiar you are with having that fatigue, the more of a beginner you are. And my advice for beginners when it comes to any kind of new experience, be it exercise or anything, is to take it slow and easy at the beginning. So you're gonna go through your first set, you're gonna start to feel that burn, and then you're gonna stop, and then you're gonna rest. How long do you rest? Now this goes for everybody, right? There's scientific way to break this down, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna say rest at least 90 seconds between each set. The longer you rest, the better, because the longer you rest, the more you can get ATB back into your muscles, making them stronger, right, for the next set. You want the next set to be as strong as you possibly can. The longer you rest, the stronger that next set is going to be. So you rest that at least 90 seconds, and then you do your second set, you repeat it again. You go just until you start to feel that burn, and then you stop. And you do that for 3 sets. Intermediate players, players that do have experience with their legs being fatigued, who are familiar with that, intermediate players, you're gonna do 3 sets too, but you are gonna go to failure, to exhaustion. So when you feel that burn, that's a good thing. For intermediate and advanced players, the exercise doesn't even start until you start to feel that burn. You don't start to get benefits, improvements, progress until that burn starts. The longer that burn goes, the harder, more intense that burn is, the more benefits you're going to get from this exercise. So intermediate and advanced, you're gonna push through that burn for as long as you can, for as many repetitions as you possibly can, right? The harder it is, the more it burns, the more benefit you're getting. For advanced players, same thing applies. You're gonna do 5 sets, you're gonna rest at least 90 seconds, and you're gonna go to exhaustion at the very least. What I mean by very least is, once you start to feel that burn and once you start to feel like you can't do anymore, instead of going all the way up to that 85–80% height in the squat, maybe you start to only do partials, where maybe you only go 40%, 30%, 20% off. And you keep doing that until you absolutely cannot do any more for that set. You want as much burn as possible, as deeply, as intensely, for as long as possible. That is the VMO squat, the one best overall leg exercise that I would do for basketball. Remember, safety first. There should be no joint pain in this movement, but there should be a world, you should be surrounded by a world full of muscle burn. If you guys have any questions, please ask down in the comments. I want to make sure you guys are doing this movement, this exercise properly. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help improve your leg strength, your leg stability, and thus your game, please subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that thanks button down below. When you do that, you're directly supporting this channel. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. Oh, and that thanks button thing, that like gives you like special features to your avatar, or what, I don't know, I'm not a super tech guy, but when you leave comments down below, you can leave like super like fancy comments, and like it changes like your avatar to be something, you know, you can choose like fancy stuff for it to be, and you can like get fancy text for your comment, all kinds of stuff like that. So when you hit that button, you get those benefits and you support the channel, so thank you. And as always, like, share, comment, hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any of my videos go live. And until then, I will see you guys next week.
Being a legend, king on top, one by one, I watch them drop. See me coming, run away, cause they know they'll be hell to pay. Knocking them down, head on the ground, watching them drop. I am a wave, I am a force, I can't be stopped. Holding the line, staying alive, lighting it up. Setting it off, tearing them down, putting them up.